Hello. We're here to interrupt your football watching to talk about a trade. The Golden Knights have made a trade. What do you know? What do you know? Good news is I said no trades until they have more wins than losses, when they had six more losses than wins. So now they have more wins than losses. So I approve of the ability to trade, I guess. Here's the deal. The deal is Rasmus Andersson for Zach Whitecloud, a first round pick, a second round pick, which turns into a first round pick if the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup. May get into that a little bit. We want that to be a first round pick, obviously. It may be, it may not be, but it's a first round pick, a second round pick that turns into a first round pick, and Abram Wiebe, a player who is ranked 18th in my prospect rankings, so effectively nothing, useless. Sorry, Abram, if you're watching this, but not so like when you're worrying like, oh, was that a prospect? It was probably not a prospect you were ever going to see. It's almost certainly get one of the numbers off of the like total 50 contracts or whatever that, or even whatever. I don't know. Maybe they like Abram Weave. I don't know. Don't worry about that. Rasmus Andersson for Zach Whitecloud, a first, a second, and a prospect that we're not all that worried about. First things first, who is Rasmus Andersson? Because I think most of us have heard the name quite a bit recently, certainly, at least over the course of the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, where basically he was effectively saying, fuck you, Calgary, I'm leaving. That it became clear over the summer. That has continued into the season. There was a report at some point, I don't remember exactly who the report was, that said that Andersson had said his preferred destination was Vegas. I think that certainly is going to come into play into this deal in and of itself. And then beyond that, it seemed pretty clear that he needed to be moved on. Boston was seemingly in the mix, according to some of the reports. I don't know how accurate any of that is. Andersson played last night. Not sure why that happened. Now that we look back at how close we were to this deal, that probably should not have happened. I don't know if that was the Golden Knights giving the go ahead, or I don't know. He probably should not have played last night. He did. He got the hugs and the handshakes, and it made it very clear that he was probably never going to play there again. That is now obviously the case, as he is now coming to Golden Knights. So he is a pretty good skater, if not a great skater. He is not massive, but he's big, 6'1", little over 200 pounds. So he's big enough. He is fairly strong in front of the goal, but not your shutdown superstar Braden McNabb and Alec Martinez in front of the goal. He is like more along the lines of in the Hannafin, right, where they can do it. They have the skill, certainly the strength to do it. He's certainly strong enough in front of the goal to do it. What he's more known for is moving the puck, transporting it. He's good at getting it out of his own zone, getting back on it quickly, making that first pass real well, getting the puck up the ice, pretty good with the stretch passes, something the Golden Knights have had a couple of guys that can do as well. And then his biggest part is he scores. He gets points, 30 points this season in a little over 40 games, but a lot of them come on the power play. Which he will not be on here at all. I know maybe you could say, well, maybe he'll get power play 2 time, but they don't play. So, okay, he may get 7 minutes in the rest of the season, which is like 70 power plays where he gets 10 seconds apiece. I don't think that math actually made sense, but there you go. As far as shooting the puck, he has a good shot, a strong shot. He can slap that thing very strongly. That was probably inappropriate. But he doesn't shoot a ton comparatively to a lot of the other Golden Knights that we have seen that have been in the position that are shooters from the point. He is a similar 5-on-5 shooting number, shooting rate. I'd call it shots per 60. It's a little over 5 at 5-on-5. That is similar to Theodore Hannafin, Petrangelo when his time, Hutton's around that same number. So it's similar to the guys. So it's not going to be someone who's going to come in and you're going to say, wow, this guy shoots it a ton. He probably gets a few more attempts. That potentially could change. We always have to be a little bit careful of what those numbers look like before guys come to the Golden Knights, because the Golden Knights don't usually rely on just ripping shots from the point and dealing with it from there. So we'll see how that changes. I think the biggest thing that is out there and really has been kind of talked about is the advanced stats are kind of mixed. There's some that are saying that he's not having as good a season or he's not as impactful, or at least the last couple of years. He was like a -30 or something of that sort last year. That's obviously not good. There are other ones that say he plays extremely difficult minutes, plays a lot. He does generate a lot of offense. He does a lot of stuff. Jay Fresh likes that stuff doing. Better players do more stuff, hits, passes, shot attempts, blocks, whatever, all of it, exits, entries, you name it. He does a lot of that stuff. Now, he plays around 24, 25 minutes a game. So that's probably not going to happen here. Maybe initially while McNabb is out. I don't think McNabb's coming back before the Olympics. So we've got whatever it is, 8, 10 games between now and then. Maybe more than likely, though, he's going to fall in the 20 range because he's not going to be on the power play. That's a good portion of the minutes as well. That's why you see Eichel above 20, Marner's typically above 20, or at least in that range, somewhere in there. So I think the minute load is going to come down. The difficulty of the minutes, I think, will also come down significantly because I think the Golden Knights still feel like their best option, even with Andersson in the mix, is going to be Theodore and McNabb against the best players. That's going to probably leave Andersson and Hanifin together. I'm not convinced that's going to be as good as what everyone thinks. This reminds me a little bit, and it's not quite there, but it reminds me a little bit of the Eichel Olofsson thing, where it's like that worked. And yeah, there was time, there were numbers, there were that type of thing that it did work. But then they came here and it didn't, it wasn't much better than anything else. I think there's a pretty strong argument that maybe they want to go balanced and at all times have one of the three of Theodore, Hanifin, and Andersson on the ice. That may be the better option. We'll see. I think initially they are going to start with Hanifin and Andersson together. I don't expect it to be tomorrow. Wouldn't stun me, though. Wouldn't stun me if he's here tomorrow because we kind of knew it looked like he was going to be out of there yesterday. So now maybe he's on the flight today. It wasn't too late. We got a 5 o'clock game tomorrow. Wouldn't shock me if he plays tomorrow. It does kind of indicate that the calling up Coughlin thing was definitely not like we just wanted to do this because they're in Colorado. No, they knew this was coming. And I think that was a little bit of a hint that we had a little bit of an inkling of it. I did say after the game yesterday, I thought maybe something was coming. That was part of it. So we'll see. Coughlin now can play if they need him tomorrow. If not, Andersson could potentially go in. Again, not the end of the world. Doesn't really matter. They're in fine position for the playoffs. I don't think that game's going to make a difference. You don't have to rush him in there. There's plenty of games. Whatever. We'll see what that is. As far as upgrade off of Whitecloud, it's a much different style of player. It's more of a repetitive style of player of what they have, which is one of the reasons I hold a little bit of concern here, is that he is similar to Theodore and Hanifin. I would argue he is the worst of the three. I don't think that that's by a wide margin. I'm not even sure that that's going to be the case. We need to see them all play in the Cassidy system with the Golden Knights, with the forwards and the wingers that they have in front of them, that type of thing. So we will see, but just on face value, what I've seen, what the numbers say, what the analytics say, eye test of watching him, certainly against the Golden Knights and all of that, I would say he falls short of Hanifin and Theodore. I think it's possible he hops over Hanifin. I think it's highly unlikely that he hops over Theodore. Is that an upgrade on Zach Whitecloud? Absolutely. However, it's not an upgrade defensively. I don't know that he's as good of a stay-at-home defenseman as Zach Whitecloud was. And I understand a lot of people watch games and we get all mad at the stay-at-home defenseman. I get it. Like, they're on the ice for the goals. They're in the tough situations. There's the moment where they don't see it or whatever. We have to look at the totality, the overall totality of it. Zach Whitecloud's a pretty good stay-at-home defenseman. Zach Whitecloud's a pretty good penalty killer. Zach Whitecloud's pretty good in 6-on-5 situations like late in games. Like, they're pretty darn good at all of them. Or at least he was pretty good at all of them. The team has been pretty good at all of it. This potentially shifts it a little bit. It's more into let's get forward, let's get the puck out quickly, let's unlock some of the offense. I think it limits a little bit of like how comfortable you're going to be in your own end, which then puts more pressure on the goaltending, which has been suspect to a degree this season because the forwards haven't been or the defense as a whole has not been as good in front of it. We'll see. The biggest part on Zach Whitecloud is like Zach Whitecloud was not officially an original Golden Knight, but he was pretty damn close, came in right at the end of the year. He's one of the few true homegrown players. He was signed as an unrestricted free agent. He was in very early development camps. Like, he's been around this organization. He's a Golden Knight through and through. So knowing that he lifted the cup, played a huge role of that, played with the Chicago Wolves for a good portion a while ago, like all of that, and just generally awesome in the community, awesome human being, like stood up in every single situation you could have. Difficult situations, like in the middle of a playoff series, he stands up there and has to deal with one of the ESPN anchors making a joke about his last name. Like, he stands up there and takes that and takes one and does unbelievably with that. Like, every situation that got thrown at this guy, he was excellent in handling them. And I'm really, really like sad. Sad's probably not necessarily the right word, but like it's disappointing to know that there will be a locker room now without Zach Whitecloud in it, because we haven't had a lot of that for a long time. Now, I do know that Rasmus Andersson is widely regarded as an awesome guy, and everybody seems to like him. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he fits in and how that goes. But there's no question to me, they will miss Zach Whitecloud. Now, the trade overall, let me put this up there first. The trade was a first-round pick this year. That is the 27 one that has the 0. Or sorry, it's the 27. Yeah, it's a first-round pick next year, so that's the 0 on the 27. The 26 0 is the first-round pick that went for Noah Hannafin. The 25, which isn't on there, that's a 0. That one went for Hurdle. The 27 second-round 0 that you see there, that potentially moves to the 28 1. Again, basically, to round this up, the Golden Knights do not have a first-round pick this year. They do not have a first-round pick next year. They have one second-round pick in the next 2 years, or they may potentially lose their 28 first-round pick. They get the second-round pick in 27 back, but they have a second Stanley Cup. It's a lot. It's a lot. A first-round pick, a player that is in your lineup and plays all of the time, a second round pick that may convert to a first round pick. Granted, I don't want to worry too much about that, because if you told me you got to get rid of the 27 and 28 picks to win the Stanley Cup, I'm in to do that, no problem. I don't know how that works with, can they actually trade the 28 first round pick, or is it locked in? I don't know. We'll have to see that. The biggest piece of it, and I'll put this back up, to me, first round picks are not who was drafted. Like, I know a lot of people look at this and say, Nick Suzuki, what a superstar. Wish we had that guy back. Yeah, that's one way. The other way is like Zach Dean or David Edstrom or Brendan Brisson, or somewhere in the middle, which is like Cody Glass and Peyton Krebs. To me, it's not about any of that. When you are in a win now mode, as the Golden Knights have now been in for, this is their 9th consecutive season of being win now, which is a good run, but around the league, there are other teams that have, press the wrong button there. Tampa, Colorado, Minnesota to a certain degree. Certainly Florida has picked it up. They were down for 1 year, like the Golden Knights were down for 1 year. Edmonton's basically been in that for a little while here now. Theirs is a little later. The bigger piece to me is when you are in a win now situation, first round picks are currency. They're the best currency that you have. They're the number one thing that you have. It's a big bag of jewels that you can hand to another team for a player that can help your team now. That's what they're worth. Long term, if you're looking out towards the future, they can be worth buying your way or drafting your way up to a very good team. Inevitably, we're going to have to deal with that with probably San Jose, probably Anaheim, maybe LA doesn't look as much like that anymore. And then we will see. Will it end up being Vancouver? Will it now end up being Calgary? Those teams are going to eventually build it up. Great examples in the past. Colorado drafted with the first pick Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. They've won a cup. We'll see what happens this year. In the past, Chicago, their best example was Kane and Tays, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. You can look at Tampa with Stamkos and Point and Kucherov and all of that. Not all of those are first-round picks, but maybe I don't think all of those are. There's two different ways to look at it. For where the Golden Knights are, the price that was paid, a first-round pick and a second-round pick that potentially convert into the first-round pick. Let's just call it a second-round pick for the rest of this because I'm sick of saying that, and I don't care if it turns into a first-round pick. That's it. Those two picks are significant in the fact that they can buy a lot. They just bought Rasmus Andersson along with Zach Whitecloud. They can buy a lot. So to not have them anymore, again, to look at this, there is no 26 pick. There is no 27 pick. There is still a 28 pick, but that's 3 years out. And then going back, there is no 25. There is a 24. There is no 23. There is no 22. There is no 21. There is no 20. So if we go all the way down, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 8 first-round picks that are in the realm of players that can potentially be in the league or at least soon, or can be used as assets to buy something. The Golden Knights are now down to 1, and he's been injured 3 times inside of the year, which means his value is probably not the player that he actually might become. So it's basically none. I would say he's worth about a second-round pick now. So they have, I keep putting this up, thanks to Puckpedia for this little chart. It's great. So they basically have 2 or 3 second-round picks for the next 3 years. That's effectively what they have to offer. Now, the reason that becomes important is because I'm concerned with the repetitiveness of the roster. That's where my concern comes into this trade. Do I think the trade is completely offset in regards to the value? I don't. I think Zach Whitecloud, a first and a second, is fine for the level of player that Rasmus Andersson is. It's fine. I don't think it's like Golden Knights stole him like they did Mark Stone back in the time. I don't think they've been fleeced like they were Max Pacioretty or Tomas Tatar back in the time, or Anthony Mantha, right? It's not any of those. It's pretty fair. It's pretty close. The issue I have is that I don't know that this particular player, Rasmus Andersson, raises the ceiling of the Golden Knights all that much. He is better than Zach Whitecloud. I'm not going to debate that at all, but he is not going to play power play time. So his numbers will diminish. His offensive numbers will decline probably significantly. He is going to play fewer minutes. He is going to play in a much different role. He is probably not going to play in as many important situations, including offensive situations. So I think the overall sense of it is he's probably not going to have the same impact offensively as he did in Calgary. And that's where his value comes in. Where I see this is very similar to the concern I have up front. Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, all excellent hockey players. Fantastic. All 3 of them. All of them bring the same concern, which is I don't know that they're going to shoot in the most important moments in the postseason at 5-on-5. They all generate a great power play. That's a big part of it. That's why the Golden Knights are in first place right now. That is a huge part of it. They do that. That could potentially win you a series. It may have against Minnesota. It certainly didn't against Edmonton. Those 3 players have repetitive qualities: playmaking, puck possession, not necessarily goal scoring. And over time, especially with Eichel and Marner in the postseason with Toronto, I don't want to go overboard on that one, but with the Golden Knights, Stone's scoring has slowed down in the postseason, except for the Cup year. Eichel scoring has slowed down in the postseason. except for the cup year. That we will see, and I'm talking goal scoring, and even the goal scorer, even the year that they won the cup, Mark Stone or Jack Eichel's goal scoring wasn't all that large. Others have to do it. They have to do it. I'm still concerned that the rest of the group doesn't have the overall offensive goal scoring chops to get the job done against the Colorados and Dallas and Edmonton and Tampa and Carolina, or whatever combination of four that they have to do. So my thought is probably still need another scorer. Where do they go to get that scorer? Very difficult when you do not have assets. When you've given up all the assets that they had, I've been saying, I think they have enough assets to do one. They've now done it. I don't believe they have the assets like people are saying Panarin. I don't think they have the assets to get Artemi Panarin. I just don't. Other teams will outbid it. It would be nice to have Artemi Panarin, and I think they can handle Artemi Panarin. I'll show you the cap in a little bit here. I think they can handle that, but they don't have the assets because they're going to get outbid. It's going to be difficult to find that player without being outbid by someone else. And I think in this particular case, they were outbid or close by, or they got, or whatever. I guess there was a bidding war with someone else, which is why the Golden Knights ended up agreeing to this deal. That is basically the deal I think they would have expected to get if with the contract extension in place, and they did it without the contract extension. So that's where I look at the entirety of the package of saying, what are the assets? And there's two problems. One, you don't have many left to go get more. And two, because you've been doing this for as long as you've been doing this, there aren't many, if any, there are literally none, players underneath that can potentially move forward to push out the Smiths and Sods and Kolazars and Sissons of the lineup. Lazan, potentially another one. They don't have that next group. So the players that are getting paid what they're getting paid have to get the job done. Now, on the cap, let's look at that real quick. First off, I want to tell you that this Periscope and all Periscopes are brought to you by the Jimmerson Law Firm. Jimmerson Law Firm is one of Las Vegas's preeminent law firms specializing in high-stakes business, civil, and family litigation. When winning matters, seek out the Jimmerson Law Firm. And when winning matters, I turn off the banner of the Jimmerson Law Firm so that you can see the cap situation. Now, first, let's put it up there. This is a simplified cap. Let me make this very clear what you're looking at here. If you're listening on the podcast, this part might get a little weird. But this is a simplified cap. The cap numbers and the cap rules have changed. The simple portion of the cap rules changing are now when you put a player on LTIR during the regular season, you get effectively $3.5 million worth of relief. If you put a player on the LTIR that's not going to play anymore, you get their full relief. That's how the Golden Knights are making these moves and doing all this, and the trade for Andersson with Whitecloud and then the retained salary. All of that added up to, like, Vegas has got more cap space by about 500,000. When McNabb comes back, that gets eaten back up. And then don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about any of that. If the Golden Knights want to make more moves, they will have ways to make more moves. That's the simplest way I can put it, without sending out all that much. They would probably have to send out smaller amounts, but I think like this one, if they want to make the move for Rasmus Andersson, that will probably involve someone off the roster that has salary. That's going to go out. So don't worry as much about that. I know the cap numbers are all over the place. One says 3 million. One says they're -9. Don't worry about that. What matters to us, because Golden Knights are in win the Stanley Cup mode. They're not in make it to the playoffs mode. This trade was not to make it to the playoffs. The trade is to win the Stanley Cup. The new salary cap rule is that your 18 players and 2 goalies must be less than the salary cap. That's what I'm showing here. The forwards, the 12 forwards that I have, Marner, Eichel, Stone, Hurdle, Barbashev, Kolazar, Howden, Smith, Saad, Dorofeev, Sissons, Bowman. I will explain why Carlson's not in there in a second. They add up to about $56.5 million. The defenseman, Theodore, Hannafin, McNabb, Anderson, with 50% of his salary held by Calgary, Lazan, and Korzak, they make up about 23.5. The goalies are Hill and Hart. I will explain that one in a second as well. They make up about 8.2. That gives us a total of about 88.1 million. The cap is 95.9. That leaves about 7 million. Obviously, William Karlsson going into the lineup will now take someone out. That would probably be Saad, Smith, or Bowman. Whoever of those goes out, we're talking about 4 to 5 million of that if Karlsson comes back. If Karlsson does not come back, then they have around 7. If he does come back, they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3. Okay, and that number can be moved around a little bit with maybe Lazan doesn't play and you go with Hutton instead. That's potentially $1 million. Hart, but then, and that's the other piece, is that when these players are not in the lineup, players that make more, if they're not on the roster, there is a little bit of cap numbers. Again, don't worry too much about that. Just go with me. The reason I have Hart on there is because if Hart is replaced by Schmid, it's probably going to end up being about the same number because Hart will have some of that cap counting when he's not in the lineup because he's whatever AHL, if that's what ends up happening. Maybe they're ending up doing LTIR on that. We'll see. That potentially is another $1 million. Okay. Overall, when you look at this, 88.1 million is what they have in the lineup that's been playing or with Andersson, and that's basically the same because Whitecloud has been playing. That's around 7 million left. That's with McNabb back in the lineup. That gives them about 7 million to deal with. So when it comes to playoff salary cap, they actually do have enough to continue pushing chips into the middle. That's where, let me put that back up so we can get our Jimmerson ad back up. That's where I grow concerned at the fact that they don't have the assets to go get the player that I think is the difference. That's the issue I have. I've been asked what I think of the trade or what I'm grading the trade. I put the little thing out there. Let's see what the numbers are real quick here because that'll be fun. Here we go. I have to scroll past my face. I hate doing that. B, 49%. A and C are tied at 21 apiece, and then D and F have 9. I would be in the C, 21%. I'm leaning more towards C minus. And I want to get into some of those reasons now. I tried to hold some of that for a minute. Now we will get into some of it. Here's why I feel this deal is a C to C minus. First, beyond any of it, is what it indicates the future of the defense is going to be. I believe that Alex Pietrangelo was a key, if not the key cog to this team winning the Stanley Cup. I believe having the number one superstar lockdown defenseman, number one stud that can play in all situations, plays against the hardest players in defensive situations constantly, and generates offense with that is invaluable to a team. I believe that the replacement of Rasmus Andersson and Noah Hanifin coming in for Alex Pietrangelo is not a replacement that like checks that box. I do not believe this is Alex Pietrangelo 2.0. In fact, I don't even believe he's Shea Theodore 2.0. I think he's below that. It's not like I'm not going on full on Kirkland brand. I'm not going there, right? That's fun. I like doing that, but I'm not here. I think he's somewhere near Hanifin, maybe a little above, maybe a little below. But, and this is where you were never going to check that box. I cannot disagree more. I cannot disagree more. Like that, yes, you were. Yes, you could have 3 weeks ago if there was enough in the tank to get Quinn Hughes. They didn't have it. They didn't have the ability to get Quinn Hughes. These players become available. Now you are looking at the future of the franchise. Oh, and that's something I didn't talk about. Andersson did not come with a contract extension. Let me just get into that quickly before I get back to this. The contract extension somewhere along the lines, he made it clear he wanted to come to Vegas. So Vegas knew they don't need to deal with the contract extension. They're going to get it done. He's going to want to stay. That's a big deal in the fact that basically you don't have to worry about this being like a rental situation. If you want to keep him, he's going to inevitably stay. That's not the case for a lot of different teams. If many other teams traded for him, that would not have been the case. That's one of the issues that we'll get to that. I believe he will sign a long-term deal. I believe it will be an 8-year deal. They will get that done as soon as they possibly can to make sure that they got it. And I also believe that he will come in as the highest paid defenseman on the roster. He will make more than the 7.5 or what is, let me look, 7.425 for Theodore and 7.335 for Hanifin. I will believe he will make more. I think it will be around 9, if not more. So it will be around the same, if not higher, than what Pietrangelo's was. That's where the concern comes in to me. You now have Theodore, Andersson, Hanifin. That is your defense. That is it. There is no way around going a different path. That's it. You're locked into that. And to me, there are issues there. One, they're repetitive. All three of them play a similar style. All three of them thrive in a situation which you are not offering them, which is power play 1 opportunities at the top. None of them are being offered that. That's why Theodore's numbers are a little bit down. Not as bad for him. Hanifin numbers are a bit down from where he was. Anderson's numbers will also be a bit down. 2, this system, the Cassidy system, does not highlight offensive defensemen the same way that many others do. The same way, I would argue, Calgary's does, which is why Hanifin looked a little bit more offensively inclined and Andersson looks a little bit more offensively inclined. In the opposite, St. Louis's did not. And so when Pietrangelo came here, he still was able to be the player that he was. It took him a while, don't get me wrong, but once he got there, he was the most important, argue maybe the second or third most important, but way up there. I can argue he's the most important player on them winning the Stanley Cup. I do not believe any of these are that. Next, beyond that, 1A defenseman and not having it does not show up in the regular season. I want to reiterate that because I constantly see this. They look fine. They're doing the job. McNabb and Theodore are doing the job. This is not when I'm worried about. I don't care about January 17th against Nashville. I don't care what it looked like against Toronto or Edmonton last week. I care what it looks like in April and in May. Theodore has not stood up to that so far. It did not work last year. In fact, it was a train wreck. Pietrangelo did not look very good at all. Then they had to turn to Theodore and McNabb. It was awful. Awful. Andersson and Hanifin, while supposedly played great together, I still don't buy that that's even necessarily the case. If they were so great together, why is the team finishing 5th in the Pacific Division over and over and over again? Either way, that's not a number 1 pair in a playoff series that you're trying to win the Stanley Cup. So to me, locking in a $9 million, whatever it happens to be on Andersson, to $7 million. And then beyond them, they also have Korczak making three and change next year and McNabb making 3 and change as well. None of those players as a collection offer a number 1 shutdown defenseman that's going to help you win playoff series. That is probably the main issue I have, is that this group of assets helped the team get a player that makes them better. But it does not help in the area where they're going to need to get better when the games are going to actually matter, when they're going to try and win the Stanley Cup come April and May. That's the concern that I have. That's the number 1 concern beyond any of it, is that this set of assets could have been used to find a 45 goal scorer, a 40 goal scorer, or 2 of them, 2 30s. 225s, something like that. The upgrade that Andersson offers off of a player like a Whitecloud, I think is limited compared to the upgrade that you could get off of Smith and Saad and Howden, or beyond that, if William Karlsson is not going to play the rest of the season, which I have been told is a distinct possibility and probably the favorite. If that is to happen, you may need an upgrade at center as well, because I don't think Mitch Marner is a lockdown center in the playoffs. I know Tomas Hertl is not. So Eichel now has to have all the most difficult minutes. That's your main offense generation. Beyond that, you're now asking for Marner to do a lot of the scoring because Eichel's trying to take care of stopping the other best players because Karlsson's not available. That's the position I think they need. They need either another center that can allow Marner to do more of the offense generation in the postseason, or they need another winger who scores, who will get you 40 goals, who going into the playoffs will do what Jonathan Marchessault did when the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup in 2023, which is score. Every time it came to him, he scored. It took a while, took like 6 games, 7 games before it got going, but then he scored. I don't believe Pavel Dorofeev is that player. I just don't. I think on the power play, he's excellent in that spot and getting better. That's a big part of this. He's getting better and better and better, which is awesome. But I don't think at 5-on-5, that's it. So the assets that have been given up to get Rasmus Andersson and be Rasmus Andersson's upgrade off of Zach Whitecloud, to me, is not enough off of what you could have done otherwise with it. Like, I think Artemi Panarin would have been a more impactful upgrade to this team in this moment. Now, if they make that happen, we may have a different talk. It's only January 18th. The trade deadline's still a ways away. So that's where I'm at on that. The other thing I don't like about this trade is I don't like RFA deals. I don't like offer sheets. That's what they're doing. They offer sheeted Noah Hanifin. They offer sheeted Mark Stone. They offer sheeted, maybe Mark Stone's a little bit different. That one's far enough away. But Hanifin and Andersson are clear. These are offer sheets. These players would have been Golden Knights if they did not make these deals. They would have been. And if they wouldn't, the amount of money that the Golden Knights would have used to get these players would have been used on someone else very similar. Rasmus Andersson is not an albatross player in the NHL. There is not one Rasmus Andersson. There is not one Noah Hanifin. In fact, Noah Hanifin and Rasmus Andersson are kind of similar. Either way, there are others of them. So the fact being, when you go out and make the trade to then sign the contract, you've now used both sides of the asset pool. The picks, which cost to use it, and the money, which goes in your which comes from your salary cap, which is what you're using. They're doing the same exact thing as an offer sheet, and they're doing it now with Hanifin, with Andersson, and they even made a trade of Nick Waugh. Would be nice to have Nick Waugh right now. Notice the center depth. When he would have signed the next day. So making all of these moves where you're deciding we need to go in now, what it does that is different than an offer sheet is it offers this year. I'll pull this back up. Rasmus Andersson's making $2.275 million against the cap this season. That is good. So if you can make it work to win the Stanley Cup this season, that's excellent. But let's go back. Go back 2 years ago when they did the same thing with Noah Hanifin. You make the move to get Noah Hanifin, to get Anthony Mantha, to get Tomas Hertl, and it doesn't work. Lose in the first round, and now all of those assets are gone. Those players remain, but many of those players could have been here anyway. Specifically Hanifin. Hanifin or someone similar to Hanifin would have been here anyway without using those picks. And to not win the Stanley Cup now made those picks a waste. Like the Nick Waugh one is just a flat out waste. It offered an 8th year that the Golden Knights don't want. And they give up Nick Waugh. Either way, that's one of the issues. That's another issue I have. They continuously go down this path. I don't particularly like that portion of it. Let's see. What else do I have on there? I think I've gotten through most of them. If anybody has questions, go ahead and put them in the chat on the side. I'll go ahead and take any of those. I think it's pretty much everything I've wanted to say on this. Again, like, I don't think it's like a terrible trade for the Golden Knights. I don't think that like they've been fleeced or we're going to look back and this is going to be the end of it. But it's another example of where we're at on moving forward and what the team looks like moving forward. All of the assets have now been poured into the next group of players, which is now Eichel, Marner, Theodore, Anderson, Hurdle, Hannafin. That group of players better be good enough to win cups because they don't have a lot to continue changing all of that out. Can that do the job that Stone, Eichel, Theodore, Marchessault, Stevenson, Carlson, Pietrangelo, Martinez, that group did back in 2022? That's where I'm at on that. And then like this is them trying to win now. That's what's being said here. They've been trying to win now for 9 seasons. They've done it. They did it once. Now, trust me, you cannot take away the one. The one is awesome. The one is fantastic. But when you look at, okay, now you're in the mix again, you got to find a way to do it again because they will probably at some point miss on some of these, whether that's free agency or this trade or the last trade or one of the other ones, and inevitably you won't have the money or the assets to fix it. And then you're going to either be in the middle, which there is an argument that's where they are now. I don't think I want to make that argument today when they're on a 7-game winning streak and leading the division by 4. 2 weeks ago, we could have made that argument pretty clearly. So that's where we're at. At some point, if it's not right, and if you're continuously doing these moves to try and up your chance to win this cup, and that's the last, I guess that's the last piece that I'll talk about is like, where are they now compared to where were they 2 or 3 hours ago when we didn't know that this was happening? The Golden Knights are probably better. A lot better? I don't know. I really don't know how much better. Are they a first and a second round pick better? No. I don't think so. And what I mean by that is look at the history of what a first and a second round pick buys. That buys a great player. It bought Brad Marchand a year ago. It bought Mark Stone at one point for the Golden Knights. Like it buys a lot. This is an upgrade. Is it a massive upgrade? I don't know. Is it enough of an upgrade to even say that they're better than Edmonton? I don't know. I know that they're not better than Colorado. I know that they're not better than Dallas. I know that they're not better. Well, I shouldn't say that on Minnesota. They're about Minnesota. Tampa, we'll see. Carolina, we'll see. I don't know. Hopefully we end up seeing that. That's the issue. And it's like, is it enough of a deal that I feel so strongly that you have to go get this? It just doesn't seem to fit the absolute need that this team had. Did they have a need on defense? Yeah, probably. I think they could have upgraded their defense. I think they could have upgraded their defensive defense. I don't think this does this. In many ways, this might actually diminish it. Not because Anderson's worse defensively than Whitecloud, but because the system is different and the ask is going to be different. And typically, it takes guys a little bit of time to figure out exactly how to get it done. And I don't know if they have the time. I just don't. And then it comes down to the end, which is what all of this is going to be judged on. And we're going to look back at this deal and the Hannafin deal and the Hurdle deal and the Mantha deal and go all the way back and probably the Marner acquisition. All of it is going to be judged on one thing and one thing only. Can you score enough in the postseason? I don't think Rasmus Andersson helps that. Maybe a little bit in like the roundabout way of they transition better, they get out of their own end better. That will free up some of these guys. I just don't think in the we need a goal in a big situation, who's going to go deliver it? I don't think it's going to be this player. And to give up that amount of capital and then probably give up that amount of money that's probably coming around the pike next, that's why I can't sit here and say I feel it's a slam dunk of a trade. I'm well aware I am a little bit of boy who cried wolf on this. I usually don't love the trades. Sometimes I've been right. Sometimes I've been wrong. I get that. So I'm well aware. I try, and I just did for 45 minutes to explain why I feel that way. And you can agree or disagree with any portion of that. That's perfectly fine. I get saying he hates every trade. In many ways, yeah, I kind of do. But for the most part, the deals that have made this team what they became, outside of Eichel, that one I was wrong on, and I will readily sit here and tell you I was absolutely wrong on that one. The ones that came after, the other ones in between, I don't know that they made them all that much better, if any better, compared to what could have happened if you did it a different way, if you went about it a different way. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why I'm going to land on, I think, C to C minus on this trade. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to do some good things in Vegas. I think he's going to sign the contract so we don't have to worry about, oh, we gave up all of this for the rental, all of that. That's where I'm at on this one. That's all I got to say. Thanks again to the Jimmerson Law Firm for sponsoring all of our Periscopes. Good night.